Hey YouTube, this is Print Practical. I know that there's some people in the 3D printing community that know how to draw their own designs, but some other people in the 3D printing community, or just other people that are curious, may want to learn how to draw 3D drawings that can eventually be used with a 3D printer to make some cool things. So I thought I'd start a series on how to draw some more simple things in Fusion 360, and then if these videos get enough attention and we want to move to something more advanced, we could do that. But to start, we have a very simple project that I think we can complete in a few minutes here, or maybe like 10 minutes, and it's a good introduction on how to draw something in Fusion. So let's hop into that. So for this first project, I have a quad outlet cover. So let's hop into this. I want to point out a few things on this technical drawing first that will help us in the Fusion when we go to actually design this piece. So the first thing that I want to try and explain to you is that when you go to draw something in Fusion, really the tools allow you to make basic shapes, lines, circles, rectangles, and then you take all these simple shapes and you combine them in certain ways to make more complex shapes. And then that's what we're going to do here. And I'm going to kind of walk through that process to show you. And it just kind of trains your brain to think in this way. And then when you go to approach a design that you want to go through with, it may help your brain kind of walk through these steps. So the first shape is the outside of the cover. That's an easy one. It's just a rectangle. In this example, it's a square, but square is a rectangle. No big deal. These two holes here for the screws in the wall, those are just circles. Another basic shape. No big deal. The outlet hole itself is a little more complex. It's got two, a top and a bottom straight section, and then it's got these rounded sections here, which are like parts of a circle. Now, like I said, you only have very basic shapes to make this happen. So what are we gonna do? In my head, this just like snaps right away, and as you get more into drawing, this stuff will just kind of click. But how we're gonna break this down is we have this dimension of 3/4 of an inch here, and we know that the distance between right here and right here is 1 1/8 inches. So what if we say that this is a rectangle? So now we have this basic shape here, and then we have these two side pieces here, which are circular. They're not a full circle though. So we could also draw arcs in Fusion. So we're going to use an arc to connect between these 2 points and stretch outward to meet this shape. But we need to be able to know the distance between here and here in order to make that happen. Well, they include that dimension down here, which is 1 3/8 inches. So the way that I would draw this piece is I would make a rectangle here, and then I'd also make a rectangle on the outside, which meets this 1 3/8 inch dimension. And then there's a cool feature in almost every CAD tool, but it allows you to apply constraints to the drawing. So I can say this point and this point have to be the same point, or in this example, I want this circle or this arch to be tangent with this line here. So with the outer rectangle and the inner rectangle and the constraint of saying that this is tangent with this line, we could easily draw this shape. So I think that is the only thing I wanted to go over before we get into the actual drawing. So I'm going to take this screen and drag it over to the other monitor where you won't be able to see it anymore, but I could possibly put this image in the video in post-production. But let's switch over to Fusion. Okay. I'm already in a sketch. That's not right. Okay. So we have a clean slate here, and we want to start drawing this outlet cover. So let's start by creating a sketch. Any type of 3D drawing, you have to draw whatever feature you're trying to draw. You got to do it in a 2D plane first. So you're drawing it in 2D, kind of like the image that we have that I just showed you. And then we pull it outward in the third dimension in order to make it a 3D part. So we're going to start, and you have to pick a plane to start on. I don't know exactly what they call this, probably the XZ plane. We're going to pick this one that is facing directly towards us. Alright, so now going through the diagram like I was talking through before, the first thing we want to do is that outer rectangle. So I click the rectangle tool at the top, bring it down to the origin. You don't have to start at the origin, but I'm going to do that. And then as you can see, when you click and start to drag out, it allows you to enter dimensions in each direction. And you can write these dimensions in metric or standard units. So in our case, we're looking at 4.5 inches. So 4.5 inches and 4.5 inches. Now, one thing I want to mention is that anytime that you make a new dimension, there's a label that is applied to it. So just me highlighting this dimension, you can see that it is D5 on the screen, which means that anytime that you use the variable name D5, it's going to refer to this measurement. So, for example, this dimension here that we typed, that was D6, if I put D5 in here, you can see that it puts a little FX, like a function label here. And that means that anytime I change this dimension will change because this one changed. So say our outlet cover requirements changed and they're like, oh, instead we want a 3.5 inch outlet cover. I changed this dimension here and it automatically changed this dimension that depends on it. This isn't something that's required. It's just nice for when you're drawing super complex parts. It allows you to make everything scale appropriately when you change certain dimensions. So I'm going to try and use this method as much as I can in this drawing, just for, to show you one way that helps make a scalable part that you're trying to make. So anyway, 4.5 inches is what it is. Okay, the next piece, we probably want to do the outlet hole. So we're going to start with one of the outlet holes. And if you remember what I talked about, we can draw our two rectangles. So we can start with the inner rectangle. And we know that that is 3/4 of an inch, or 0.75 inches, and then 1 1/8 inches. And we don't necessarily care about the location of this right now, because I'll show you how to automatically align it so that all four of them are centered within this rectangle. But just taking simple steps right now. So we have our inner rectangle. Now remember, I said that we wanted to draw an outer rectangle and then we can draw some arches here to make that final shape that we want. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick a rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a rectangle over this. And we didn't even put dimensions on it yet. So one thing that you can do, and what I said was that you can use constraints. So firstly, let's put in our dimension that we know, which at the bottom left outlet hole, you can see that it says 1 3/8 is the dimension. Okay. So we got our width, but we're not constrained vertically, and we really want this to be centered and aligned with this line and this line here. So what we're going to do is we are going to set a horizontal constraint, and if you hold shift on your keyboard, it allows you to highlight the midpoint of a line. So I can say I want to align this midpoint with the midpoint of here. Now that ended up doing a horizontal constraint. This is one thing that's a little different in Fusion than Inventor, which is like the more professional version of the drawing software. But in Fusion, it has a horizontal and vertical constraint tool. In Inventor, those are two separate things, because it was possible that I wanted to constrain this vertically. I don't know why. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I wanted to constrain this vertically, but instead it constrained it horizontally. So you might have to actually move your rectangle so that it's pretty close. And then you could do a constraint here. You do a constraint in your midpoint and your midpoint, and now they're perfectly aligned. And now we could do the same. So now we want to constrain this line and this line to be pretty much one line, right? Because really all we care about are these outside dimensions. So what we're going to do, and we don't actually have to do anything else. Technically, we can make an arch, and because this is middle aligned, we can just make a tangent to this line and it will be fine. But in order to clean up the drawing a little bit, let's just see what we can do here. I'm going to do this constraint, a coincident restraint, and pretty much I can just constrain this point to being on this line. So if you do that, it's going to force this line to pretty much be one line, and then I'm going to do the same to the bottom part. Boom. So now you see this is starting to take shape, right? Now, like I said, we can make an arc, and we're going to use a 3-point arc, which means that first you pick your two endpoints, which, if you remember what I was saying in the drawing, so the two endpoints are on this inner rectangle, and then we want to pull this out and make it tangent with this line. Now I could click on this line, or I can show you a different way. Let me just put the arc there. There's a tangent constraint here. So you can click that, and then you can select your arch, and you can select the line, and then boom, it automatically made that shape for us. So let's do that again. Tangent. All right. Now you can see we got that outlet shape here. So let's just take a break real quick, and let me show you about how we're going to make this into a 3D drawing. So I'm going to hit Finish Sketch, and you can see this is not in 3D. This is just a drawing. But like I said, once you have a drawing, you need to pull it out in 3D. So there's this extrude tool here. And this is how we're going to pull this out. So I could select, what do I want to pull out of the drawing? Well, I want to pull the whole cover, and I want to pull everything that's not part of this inner shape. And now you need some type of depth. This design doesn't have that, so let's just say it's 3 millimeters. Okay, there you go. So there is our 3D outlet cover with one outlet that is not aligned in any way on the cover. But this is just to show you, we're making progress. It's, you're able to draw something and pull it into 3D. Super cool and super useful. So I'm going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to draw the remaining 3 other ones of these, draw the holes, and then we'll align everything in the middle, and then we'll be done. Alright, I'm back. Let's finish this bad boy up. So down at the bottom is what Fusion calls a timeline, and you can go back and forward in time by removing your features and bringing them back. Also, up here is your sketches, and you can turn this back on to see what our sketch looked like before and after that feature was extruded. So those are just some helpful tips, but let's go back to modifying our sketch. We're just going to delete this extrusion for now because it's going to change significantly. I just clicked on it, hit the delete button on my keyboard. We're back to just having the sketch. I can double click on that sketch and get back into it. Now, we are going to be able to draw the remaining 3 of these in one easy step. So let's do that now. In the Create tab at the top, there is a way to do a rectangular pattern. And what this is going to allow us to do is we're going to be able to specify a dimension in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction and how many copies of this current object that we have. And it'll automatically create all of those for us. So I'm going to hit rectangular pattern. And now we have to select all the objects that we want to copy. So I'm going to just click here, and I'm going to highlight this whole box. Boom. Got it all. And now you can see by this arrow here, we can pick in which dimension or which way we want to do a copy. So in the horizontal direction, we want to have a total of 2, including the original, and then I need a distance. Unfortunately, I'm referring back to the diagram that I started with, and this dimension is the only dimension that does not exist in that diagram. So this is an incomplete diagram. After searching the web and finding a different diagram, it has slightly different dimensions, but for this example, it'll work, and it's at 46 millimeters. So I'm going to use that. It looks right. Just by looking at that distance between the two, it looks okay in the design, but I can print this out, and if it doesn't fit, I can tweak it all myself. But for this example and showing you how to draw, it's totally fine. So I copied that over horizontally. Now I can click the vertical direction, and I can say that I want 2 copies, including the original. And we do have a distance on our diagram, and that distance is 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. And as you can see, because this is a rectangular copy, it copied in this direction, it copied down or vertically, and then it also made a copy underneath the horizontal copy and next to our vertical copy, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to hit OK. Takes a little bit to load, but boom. Now we have 4 of the exact same things. Now, how are we going to align this in the middle? Well, that's easy now because we know how to constrain. And what we can do is we can draw a rectangle around all of these, like that. And then we can constrain that rectangle by the midpoint to be aligned with our outside cover. So I did it that way. And I did it vertically. Boom. We are now in the middle. Now, this looks a little different than the diagram as I'm looking at it, and that's because they actually have a line inside here that's drawn, and it's more of a blurry line or a grayish line, but it represents that these are curved edges on the outlet cover. So we'll get there. Don't you worry. All right, next thing that we want to do is we want to draw two holes for this hole and this hole. So what we're going to do, grab our circle, and as I came over here, it automatically aligned to the middle of this line, which is perfect. And we are going to do a circle, and our dimension is 3/16 of an inch. Why is that not accepting it? For some reason, Fusion is being a little weird about a dimension that is less than 1 inch. And I'm not really sure because I don't work in inches too often. But what we can do is we can just put in the decimal representation. So it's 0.1875. It's kind of lame to do it that way, but I have to Google what's going on there. What did I say it was? Now I forget. This is just 1875. Ooh. 1875. There we go. All right, and then what we want to do is we want to constrain this hole, and we want this to be in the middle. We want this to be in the middle of this line, right? Because we want it to be aligned perfectly with that. And then we also want this to be aligned perfectly in the middle of that, which it was already pretty good. Now, we can do the same thing on this side. We draw our circle, boom. But remember, we want to use this dimension, because if this dimension changes, we want them both to change. D16, you highlight that, tells you D16. You hit your dimension tool here. D16. Done. Now they're both the same size. And then we want to remember to constrain this hole. Line it up. Line it up. And we are good. We are done all of our drawing for this project. So if we hit finish sketch, we have our completed sketch here. And we can use the extrude tool now to pull this out in 3D. Now we want to pull everything out except for our outlet holes and these two holes for the screws. So we're just going to select everything. There's a way to make these lines so that they are more of construction lines, but you know, I'm not trying to get too complex here for everyone. This is just a beginner tutorial. We'll get into some more complex things later. And we're going to bring this out. They don't have this as part of the dimensions either, but for now, I will bring it out like 3.5 mil. And we have our 3D plate. Now, this probably doesn't look, as pretty as one of these plates that you get from the store. And then also I mentioned, in this diagram, it shows that there are these light gray lines, and I told you that those were rounded edges. So we can do that in this tool as well, and that's called a fillet. So if you go to modify, there's this tool called a fillet tool, and I think that's how you say it, but I'm not like actually professionally trained, so who knows. And if you click that, it asks you to select some edges or faces or features. So we're going to select all the edges around the outside of our cover, and we're also going to select these corners here too, because we'll get a little bit of rounding there. Now, I'm not sure exactly what a real outlet cover looks like for this, because I'm not looking at one, but we're going to just try it this way. So now you have to put in a value for it. Let's just put in 1, see what it looks like. Okay, that's not that serious. What about 3? Okay, that's looking more like an outlet cover. I would say that's pretty darn good. Let's put in 3.5, which is how much we extruded it. I can't do that. 3.25 looks like almost. That looks beautiful. That looks good. Okay. Perfect. We're going to accept that, so we're going to hit OK. Another thing, there's some gray lines, light gray lines around the 2 holes here. And just from experience, I know that is chamfer. Typically because it's kind of like countersunk so that the screws sit flushly in the cover. So I clicked in modify, there's a chamfer option. And I'm going to select the 2 edges of that circle. And then let's just put in 1mm field out. That looks pretty good. I think 1.5 will look nice. Perfect. That looks good. This is looking super legit. Now, I think that this is really close to the final product. But, that plastic covers like this, when you buy them from the store, they're typically hollowed out in the back. This is a flat back, and this would work. This would really work, but I think that I'm going to just take a little more material out of here. It's a cosmetic cover. Doesn't need to be strong, but I also don't want it to be too flexible to where it's just, a piece of junk. So let's start a sketch, and you can start a sketch on this back face here. So that's where I'm going to start it. Now, so now I'm going to use this tool called the offset tool. And what this does is I can select the shape, which I'm going to select like the whole outside of the cover. Like that. And then I'm going to be able to put in an offset. So I think that I'm going to do, I think like a 5mm offset would be good. That looks good to me. And then I'm going to use this offset tool again. And I don't know if I can select multiple curves. I don't think I can. Let me see if I can. That would be sweet if I could. No, I can't. So I'm going to just make some more offsets here. As you can see, sometimes it says that if you put in like a positive value, it's going to go on the inside. And all you have to do is just write it in a negative, if you want to do it the opposite way. So I think I'm going to do -5. Yeah. Yep. I'm going to just do... Actually, I'm going to do... One thing that you can do is when you do an offset like this, you can also click on a dimension. So like here I did 5, so I can click. Oh, now it's making a liar of me. That's quite frustrating. Anyway, I'm going to just highlight this, D23. So I'm going to just make an offset of D23. And then as you can see, it went on the inside. That's just like Fusion. That's just part of Fusion. So you can just make that negative. It's going to go on the outside. And we're going to do that. We're going to make everything D23. Negative D23. Okay, so this one went on the inside. Offset D23. Negative. Okay. And that looks good to me. So we're going to hit finish sketch. And we're going to try and make this whole area, right? We're going to make this whole area, we're going to push it in a little bit. We're going to cut some material out. Just to be a little conscious of how much material we're using. So you could pick your operation here when you hit extrude. And instead of making a new body or pulling this part out in 3D, we're going to actually cut into it. So we're going to hit cut. And then we made it 3.5 thick. I don't know. I'm only going to pull 1mm material out. So now as you can see by this arrow, it's going outward. So I'm just going to put -1mm. -1.5. There we go. And there we go. I think that looks good. All right. So if you followed me all the way through this, and I don't know if you were doing this with the video or if you were just watching this for, for some information, but hopefully you're able to draw something simple like this. And then if you want, subscribe to the channel. I'll put up some more things on Fusion 360, and hopefully we can get you drawing some more complicated things soon. So subscribe, and thanks for watching.